This presentation is on Phase 2 of the Massachusetts Law Enforcement Crash Report EManual. I'm Robin Reisman, the Director of UMass SAFE. Co-presenting with me is Jen Gazzillo, Program Manager at UMass SAFE. And we also have with us Ben Rooney-Yeager, who's assisting with the technical portions of the Zoom meeting. So if you're having any trouble seeing the screen or having sound, in the chat box, describe your problem and Ben will help you. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I'm going to give you a short, or Jen and I are going to give you a short presentation with lots of room at the end for questions and answers and hopefully a lively discussion. So most of you know UMass SAFE, but since some of you don't, I wanted to give you a little background on who we are and what we do. So we're a multidisciplinary staff with backgrounds in a lot of different areas, including transportation safety, traffic records, public health, public policy, engineering, systems management, and programming. So we are not just an engineering program. And one of the things that I think is a little bit different about us is our unique ability to examine highway safety from a variety of different perspectives. And with that, provide the tools that are needed by the various different state and federal agencies to do their work. We're a very applied research program. In fact, our name, Traffic Safety Research Program, is almost a misnomer in that our research is so applied that it's often not considered research. We're 100% grant funded, and we're a small staff. We have 4 full-time staff and Dr. Nodler, and then we have many graduate and undergraduate students, depending on the project and the need. And our real goal is to try to bridge the gap between scientific, data-driven research and the 3 E's, the work that all of you do. So a lot of what we do is try to translate research into practice in order to support the work that you do. And you'll see in the examples that I'll share that what we really do is provide services to the various state and federal agencies to help them do what they do. So in Phase 1 of the Crash EManual, in Phase 1 of the Crash EManual, we developed this online Crash EManual that had a searchable data dictionary, that had resources on why crash data is important, assistance on location information for the crash report, and a variety of other tools. And it was a website, is a website, and there's also a PDF paper version of the manual. We've received a lot of feedback on the Crash EManual and its real extensive use among law enforcement. We were surprised actually to find out how many law enforcement departments use the PDF version of the Crash manual. They find that it's helpful to have the printed version at desktops as law enforcement are filling out crash reports. They also find it useful to have a link to the Crash EManual website on the actual PC screen so that law enforcement can look up things as they need them. And as you can see on the screen, this is the kinds of resources that are offered on the tool. Most recently, we added some information on a previous TRCC funded project, Crash Report Guidelines. And when we provide a demo of the tool, we'll share more about that with you. So there've been a lot of partners that have been involved in this project. It's actually been one of the pieces that's been the most fun for us. Jen, if you can switch to the next slide, there we go. So from the very beginning, we've had lots of state agencies play a very active role in the part 1 of the Crash EManual, and you can see here who many of them are. A special shout out to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, who've done a lot of work to assist us both in the development and even more in the dissemination of the Crash EManual. And the law enforcement liaison, Donna, has done a lot of work to help us with that. We've also done some Google Analytics to get a sense of how the Crash EManual has been used thus far. So in 2019, there were 6,162 unique users who spent at least a minute on the website. Impressively, since January 1st of this year, we've seen 6,265 users. So we anticipate really there being double that by the end of the year. These numbers overlap with some of the new pieces that have been added to the Crash EManual and the supervisor's review guidelines, which again we'll show you when we give you the demo. So of these visitors in 2020, 15% have already returned for a second visit. So the feedback appears to be very good, that people know about the tool, people are using the tool, and people are finding the tool useful. So let's talk about next steps and what this proposal is about. This project, the goal is to improve crash data quality, as all our projects are. And what we want to do in phase 2 of the Crash EManual is we want to expand the content on the website, and we want to increase usage on the website. And you'll see here that we envision that the work we're going to do is going to address accessibility, accuracy, completeness, uniformity, timeliness, and integration. So we'd really like to start by giving you a demo of what the tool looks like right now. And I'm going to turn things over to Jen, who will do that, and then we'll talk together about how we're going to expand the tool in this next phase. Jen, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Robin. I'm here, and I'm just going to share a new screen. And please jump in if I'm forgetting anything or if I'm going too fast, because I know this like the back of my hand, so sometimes I speed through the pieces that are more interesting to others, thinking that everyone just knows what I know. So let me give you a little tour of the website as it exists now. This is the landing page, homepage. There's an interactive drop-down menu bar up at the top. In the middle is pretty much the main feature. It's what everyone jumps to when they get here. It's a live data pull search bar. So you can type in any crash report field that you're looking for more information on into the search bar and find out more details about it. So for example, let's go to injury status. I start to type it in. It's a little slow because I bet all of you are going to the website right now. And with all of us working from home, it's been a little temperamental. And here we go, injury status pops up. So I can these are all the different links that have the word status in them. Let's go to the injury status page. And here you can see this is all about this one individual crash report field. Who knew so much backbone information could go into one field? So here we have some instructions, a definition, a rationale, an update that was done in early 2019 and implemented across the state. So this dark blue box explains what the update that happened. The medium blue box, the reminder box, tells you different caveats that might be unique to the field that you're looking at. In this instance, we use this opportunity to remind people that if there is no injury, that they must enter or that they should enter code 10. There's also very detailed definitions for each individual attribute, including the old attributes that are being phased out. So for example, if you are an officer and you are recording the level of injury severity of a person at this crash, in the crash, and you're torn, you don't know whether there is suspected serious injury or suspected minor injury. These are codes 7 and 8. You can come to the Crash EManual, type it in, and find, oh, well, you must have one of these criterias to be considered a suspected serious injury. So it provides very concrete definitions, and this aids police officers in making an informed decision on which attribute to choose. All of these fields that exist on the crash report form are accessible via the data dictionary dropdown, which is up here on the top bar. And they're broken out into different category fields: crash, vehicle, driver, non-motorist, truck and bus, passenger, and then unique fields that are usually problematic. So if you were looking to familiarize yourself with fields that are problematic, you could come here to the problem fields. Other features of the crash report EManual are within the drop-down of data importance. We have why crash data is important, the guidelines project, which I'll click on that right now. This is the project that was just completed, and these 3 PDF printable documents are available here for officer use, either referenced via digitally or you could print them, and they've been passed out statewide through the partnership with the law enforcement liaison at the registry. So these PDFs are here. They talk about specifically why crash data is important. We're trying to encourage and educate data reporters, data collectors across the state on why the quality is so important and how the data is utilized by data users like all of yourselves who are probably listening today. And then we also have crash narrative guidelines where the attempt is to try to bring all narratives across the state into a more streamlined manner and to have them all follow the same flow and utilize the same criteria of what should be included in a narrative and what shouldn't. And then this 3rd document here is the crash report elements that are the most important to be checked for completeness when a supervisor is reviewing the crash report form. These are the ones that are often left incomplete for passengers or non-motorists. And then we did some webinars on these 3 different materials, and the webinars are posted down here as video links to YouTube. So this is just an example of how we're able to disseminate some information that is coming out of other projects via the EManual. And then here within the reporting components dropdown, there's a special focus page on each of these different pieces of the crash report form that are usually lumped together among users of crash data who are pretty familiar with this stuff on location methods, diagram, narrative. All of these are very unique pieces of the crash report form and require more explanation. So if we go into the location methods section, there's 5 different allowable methods, and we've worked closely with the Highway Safety Division. Thank you to Bonnie and all the people over there that have helped provide this information to us to share here with the data recorders and the police officers who are using this. And here you can click amongst the 5 different methods, and it'll tell you what are the required fields that should be filled out when you're utilizing, for example, the exit ramp method. Some guidelines, instructions on when the exit ramp method is applicable. And then here's an example of the I-91 northbound and how to use exit 24 by indicating that you're 20.00 feet north of exit 24. So this is just an example of how we're able to provide resources to police officers who are using this website to improve their data quality. And totally encourage you, please come here, peruse, let us know if you find anything. What we love so much about this website is that it's a living document. So as things improve, as things change, as people make decisions at the RMV on, okay, this is what we're requesting of the departments, we're able to immediately, the very next business day, go up here and plug it in, and now this information is being disseminated, updated live to law enforcement across the state. So that's pretty much, those 3 main tabs are the most interesting, fun things to play with. And as Robin was mentioning about the PDF download, that a lot of officers like to just have a solid PDF that doesn't change, that isn't interactive. On the homepage, if you scroll down here in this 3rd box, it says PDF manual, and this is where you can download the manual. It's essentially the same content, and anytime we make a change to the content within a data dictionary field in this website, we also make it to the PDF. Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I think you've got it. Thanks, Jen. So that was phase 1 of the project. That was also funded with 405C TRCC funds. And what we'd like to do now is we'd like to expand on the crash EManual. And really we'd like to do that for 2 reasons. One is that we've received a lot of feedback about the tool and about how much law enforcement is using it. And it makes sense, therefore, to continue it and expand it as much as we can. And the other is that there's already been additions to the tool. And so it makes sense to begin to think about what else we can add. So here's our sense of what we'd like to do in this next step. We'd like to solicit more feedback and examine more thoroughly how the crash EManual is used. We'd like to do some updates and expansion to the tool, and then we'd like to do further promotion and include it in some other related projects. And so over the next few slides, we'll just tell you some more about that. So in phase 2, we would like to solicit as much feedback as we can about what law enforcement thinks about the tool, what they use, what they want that's not on the tool yet, etc. And so we're really going to do 2 things. The first is we're going to conduct key enforcement interviews and or a survey where we can ask law enforcement lots of questions about what do you use, what don't you use, what would be helpful to add, etc. And then the second thing that we're going to do is additional Google Analytics so that we can get a real sense of how the site is used. So for example, we can look at what pages, users go to get help, and how long they spend on each page, and what page they get to next, and how they access the tool. Do they do a search, or do they have the website already? And when we find this information, we feel like we can continue to make the tool as user-friendly as possible. We also can track locations to get a sense of what sections of the state are using this tool and what sections aren't, and that will help us with promotion so that if it's being used a lot, for example, in Suffolk County, then we can spend more time promoting it in Western Massachusetts or wherever the need is found. The next thing that we'd like to do is integrate some additional content in the tool. And here's a sense of what we'd like to add. So we'd like to integrate relevant Registry of Motor Vehicle system edit checks and validation rules into the pages as requested. So we found in the traffic records needs assessment that this is one of the things that NHTSA felt was important to share with users, and we'd like to make this a one-stop shopping place where folks can access this information. The information would come from the registry would decide what information made sense to share, and we would design this edition in a way so that it could be updated very regularly based on those changes. We'd also like to assist the Registry of Motor Vehicles in their work with record management system vendors. So those vendors are the folks that have systems with which different law enforcement agencies enter their crash data. And there's about 10 of those different systems across the state, and each have some strengths and weaknesses. The registry is doing a really good job of working with those vendors on sharing with them what's working and what's not working and what could be improved. So we'd like to share some resources with them there. We'd also like to evaluate opportunities for adapting ANSI D16 definitions. And for those of you that don't know what ANSI D16 is and what MUC is, those are tools that the federal government has created in order to help states have the same information, so that if we have definitions in our crash report here in Massachusetts, that they can be similar to the definitions in other states when appropriate, so that analysis can occur comparing data from state to state.
And we fall back a lot on the MUC guidelines to supplement any of the definitions that we didn't have specifically explicit at the state level. MUC is kind of the gold standard across the nation of the exact definitions for the exact fields. They also have flow charts and diagrams showing of which field should be entered first before this field. And Massachusetts is making its way there to adopting all of the MUC guidelines a little bit at a time as feasible through their updates. And we utilize those definitions when possible to give rationales and examples and try to align ourselves with that to conform to the national initiative to everyone. All states eventually wind up with the MUC structure.
And so we'll continue to examine what MUC fields or what MUC definitions are used in our crash report form in Massachusetts, and whether there's any additional information from ANSI D16 that could be added to the crash EManual for better understanding from law enforcement. The next thing we'd like to do is we'd like to expand the site to have some interactive overlays. So it was interesting when Jen and Ben actually did the pilot test of the Crash EManual when we first got started. So some of the law enforcement that participated in the pilot test had a really interesting idea, and that was to have some overlays on the website so law enforcement could click on a specific portion of the crash report or a specific field or attribute in order to get the information that they need. And so that's what we would like to do in this next section. So users of the Crash EManual could go to the search bar that Jen described before, or they could go to what the crash report, paper form of the crash report looks like, and they could scroll over it and pick a section that they were looking at more information on. Or they could look at one of the record management system layouts and do the same. For example, we could look at the Mass State Police RAMS system for entering crash data, and they could scroll over it and click on places where they're looking for more information.
Really excited about this feature. I'm not sure if anyone has experienced this overlay type of training on any other websites, but if you see that little black box that has the white writing and the form that's underneath it is harder to see, we can do a guided walkthrough to teach, to help explain or bring anyone up to speed on what really is inside the crash report form. And it can just be a step-by-step guide to familiarize people with the different sections of the crash report form. And it'll show you in real time on the screen that they're used to seeing at their police barracks or their department what it looks like. So, oh, we're on this section, I'm stuck here. Let me hover over this field that I don't know what I should be doing when I reach this field, and it'll provide resources immediately without even having to click. Well, you'll get a quick view if it's a hover, and then if you do click on it, then we can have an entire pop-up with all of the complete definitions.
It's actually the portion of the edition that we're most excited about. And then on the next slide, this is the other additions that we'd like to add to the Crash EManual. So we would like to create some resources for record management system vendors so that they can access information that they're needing as they're working on improving their tools. So the Registry of Motor Vehicles does quite a bit of work with the vendors, exploring and describing to them where the problems are in the data that comes from their system. And one of the things that we'd like to add here in this kind of one-stop shopping idea is resources for them in how they can continue to improve their system. The other thing we'd like to do is create a traffic records news page, and that would allow stakeholders to provide information on the projects that they're working on new tools, on new resources, anything that could be of useful to all of us as highway safety stakeholders and other stakeholders. So the last piece of what we'd like to do with the Crash EManual Phase 2 is further promotion of the site. We'd like to get as many users as we can. And so you'll see on the left of the screen, that's a postcard that we've been distributing to share with law enforcement how to access the tool and what's on the tool. And actually, Donna DeVega, the law enforcement liaison at the Registry of Motor Vehicles, has been instrumental in distributing this to law enforcement. So we'd like to expand on that. We would like to print additional postcards. We'd like to do email blasts. We'd like to maintain law enforcement academy needs, again, via the law enforcement liaison. We'd like to give presentations to law enforcement and other data user audiences. And we'd like to incorporate this into other resource libraries. So other websites that are being used within the Commonwealth and other places where we can share this with law enforcement. So finally, what are our benchmarks and performance measures? It's important to us that we look at where we stand today and how the Crash EManual Phase 2 can improve the crash data that we use in the Commonwealth. And so our goal here is to improve the accuracy and the completeness of crash data by decreasing the number of police crash reports which have occurrences of invalid or incomplete data. And we're specifically using a designated number of fields deemed important. And our goal is to reduce the incomplete or invalid data from 42% to 30%. And I should note that the way that we do this is that we query the UMass Safe Data Warehouse, and we look at a period of time and all the crash data from all the police crash reports in order to access by month and by year what the invalid or incomplete data looks like. And finally, just wanted to overview what we included in the presentation in terms of what the traffic records assessment recommendations were that we based on designing this expansion of the Crash EManual. And I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see that one of the recommendations is data used to evaluate countermeasure programs. And this talks about the ways that expanding this site will assist data users and data analysts in doing that. We will expand on the data dictionary and make sure that there are edit checks and validation rules as NHTSA is recommending. We will, as we talked about before, we will look at the ANSI D16 definitions and look at those and compare those to MUC and figure out which ones would be of most use to law enforcement as they're completing crash report forms, and then provide information on those. And lastly, we will look at feedback. So is there data quality feedback from key users that would be helpful for data collectors to continue to improve the data that they collect? You know, one thing that we hear from law enforcement often over and over again is we want to do the right thing and we want to give you the data that you need, but we don't always know what that is. And so one of the things that we'd like to do here is make sure that we're providing resources to law enforcement on what data is used by data analysts, how is it used, when there's problems with the data, what does that cause? And so we'll provide lots of key information on that. So that, in a nutshell, is the Law Enforcement Crash Report EManual Phase 2 project. I hope that we've explained what this would look like, and look forward to the possibility of implementing it. If you have other ideas for things that you think could be incorporated into the website, please feel free to contact us. So thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody, and stay healthy and safe.